For the first time in modern history, there are 5 generations working side by side, right? You've got the traditionalists who are probably, maybe chairing the board or acting as advisors. There are baby boomers. There's Gen X. There's millennials. There's now Gen Zs. And Gen Alpha is walking through the door, coming in for early internships.
Yes.
Right? We've seen gaps in working styles. And now you've got the AI gap. We're overwhelmed by pace at which things are changing. Rising cost of living, loneliness. There's layers of anxiety.
The biggest one is anxiety. It is absolutely an epidemic. There's absolutely no one that has taught us how to deal with people that have anxiety. That is not a lesson. There's human skills that we are expecting people to know. Self-awareness, self-regulation. This just doesn't happen.
What would your advice be to leaders and to managers?
You are here to guide, to be a Sherpa, not to have all the answers, but to certainly be that steady place. However, if you are not able to care for yourself, it is very difficult to truly, truly be there for another person.
I'm excited to be here in the studio in New Jersey today to be talking to Claude Silver, who's the Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. Claude is also the author of Be Yourself at Work. She's a coach, mentor, and a LinkedIn top voice. Now, before I get into that conversation with Claude, I just want to say thank you so much for watching the Lakshmi Rebecca Show. The Lakshmi Rebecca Show is brought to you by Makers, a borderless creative agency. Makers works with large and fast-growing businesses to support on campaigns, podcasts, videos, and branding and design services across markets. We also have a unique book a crew service where we provide curated, managed professional video crews across 100 countries. This episode is brought to you by Makers. That's www.makers.com. That's www.makers.com. So reach out to us for your next creative requirement. Once again, thank you for watching this show. Do hit follow or subscribe. Claude, it's fabulous to have you here in the studio in New Jersey.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you here in really my hometown.
Well, pleasure to be here. And thank you for making the time. And I know you've been sort of jet-setting all over the world promoting your new book, Be Yourself at Work. And I've been not so much reading, but listening to it on Audible. And I find your story so fascinating. So fascinating. From the little girl who was so unsure of herself to the 19-year-old who went on a 93-day wilderness journey, almost quit on day 1, but then saw through the whole thing, to discovering yourself, studying psychology, becoming a jet-setting, advertising executive, and then eventually the Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. Along the path, I think you also met somebody. You have, you had 2 children in your early 50s.
Yes.
And now you've written this book where you talk about authenticity at work. I just want to hear your story.
Okay.
That's where I want to start.
As we say, what is your origin story?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I was born in New York City, and we lived there until I was about 11, and then we moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So imagine being from India and all of a sudden being placed in the Grand Canyon. That's how different it was. New Mexico, or Santa Fe, as I should say, is such a city of culture and beauty, natural beauty, and the trees everything's a little brown, not as much green. It's very Southwest. So I'll get to that in a second. But so
and New York is so vibrant,
New York,
warm, and there's so much happening all the time, and lots of people on the street.
Yeah, in a melting pot. You hear different languages, you see different people all the time. And so my mom, when I was a kid, was an elementary school teacher. She had been one for about 17 years before we moved to Santa Fe. My dad has always been an investment banker, venture capitalist, and I have an 18-month younger brother who's just my champion, and I love him. Caleb is his name. I started my world, I would say, knowing that I was a tomboy. I just was more comfortable in jeans. I was more comfortable throwing a baseball. I was more comfortable learning how to kick a football. Those things came easier to me, I would say. However, I remember being around 5 years old and knowing that I could pick up on other people's energy. I had no idea that was intuition, obviously, as a 5-year-old, but I remember vividly being able to feel, or what felt like I was feeling other people's emotion, if you will. Again, I didn't have words for that, but I knew I was very sensitive. And I also struggled in school at an early age. I recently asked my parents, you know that person I saw when I was around 7 or 8 who did a lot of spelling work with me? Was that actually a therapist? And my parents said yes. Okay, I just thought it was a tutor. Maybe she was a tutor therapist, but I knew I was speaking to someone about some of the difficulties I had with spelling and reading at an early age. And fortunately, like I said, my mom was an elementary school teacher, so they found that very quickly, which was great.
What did they identify?
Oh, dyslexia.
Okay.
Dyslexia,
Yeah.
which is now a superpower to me, and it's something I'm very vocal about because I would never want anyone to struggle. And back in those days, this is in the the 70s and early 80s, I don't think we had the same tools.
Yeah, and back in those days, I mean, if you couldn't read or write and conform, and I mean, at least in India, do well in your exams, it was a big thing. So it's a huge matter of shame.
Even though it wasn't a huge matter of shame
in your context and
in my
culture.
context, I felt it. I felt very dumb. I felt very uneducated. I felt at a very young age, I knew that I was having challenges that my brother wasn't. And because we're so close in age, if I was in 4th grade, he was in 3rd grade. I mean, we were right there, neck and neck.
Yeah.
And it was very obvious to me that he was a much more confident student, a confident young little person. And again, I was confident when it came to people and athletics. And so we ended up moving to Santa Fe, like I mentioned, right around the time I was 12. And so interesting, we were just saying how New York is a melting pot. And we're Jewish. We were raised Jewish. And we went to Santa Fe, and maybe we were one of 3 or 4 Jewish families after leaving Manhattan, which is really
which is
enormous.
A very rich community.
A very, very rich Jewish community, among many other communities. And that was wild to me because everyone I knew celebrated Christmas. Everyone I knew had a Christmas tree. And that was so, if I think back to ways in which I didn't feel like I belonged, that was one of those ways. I was different. We were different. And
so the difference that you experienced in Santa Fe, it didn't actually make it easier for you because now you're actually amongst outsiders who didn't have the same benchmarks, maybe?
No, I think I was eager to fit in. I say that in air quotes because that's what it felt like. And you've read the book and you know what I think about the term fitting in, which I have a lot of opinions about now.
Yeah.
But I also was already not feeling great in school, that I wasn't fitting in. And so when I'm asked a lot of the times, like, why do you care so much about belonging? Why do you care that people feel like they have a space, a place? I know what it's like to not. When you have that learning disability, you know what it's like to not be able to keep up with the Joneses, right?
Absolutely.
And moving to Santa Fe, being Jewish, and I was on the eve of getting my bat mitzvah, which is something that young people get at 12, 13. I just felt weird. Also, I was awkward. I had braces. I had big red glasses, not like my reading glasses. Like
you still have cool red glasses.
I have cool red, but they were not cool when I was 13. It's the 80s though, mind you. And so my mom thought they were cool, so I wore them. And what I'll say is I found my place in school, not academically, with my friends. I went to a very small prep school called Santa Fe Prep. Again, my brother went as well, so we were neck and neck. And that was from 7th to 12th grade. And so I was in a community that was very tight. My best friends are still there in Santa Fe. And I struggled. I really struggled with school. And to the point where I think in many ways I gave up. I just couldn't get it. I couldn't grasp whatever it was the teacher needed me to grasp. So for example, algebra, which is something we teach in school. I took it 3 times. And the last time I took it, I was a senior in high school, taking it with freshmen in high school. You know, there I was like about to graduate with people that were, you know, just entering into high school. And so I had this feeling a lot of times of just being out of place.
Of not being good enough?
No, not being good enough for sure. Yeah, thank you for naming it. Not being good enough and just out of place, not really understanding where I fit in.
And did the struggle with the algebra also have to do with dyslexia?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
1,000%. So,
And even though you were diagnosed and you had support,
Oh, yeah.
you still felt.
oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, I've only come to appreciate being dyslexic since I was maybe 35 or 40. You know, I mean,
Okay.
it's a long, put it this way, in my world, Gen X, and certainly in the culture that I was brought up in, you know, as a Gen Xer, we weren't taught to talk too much about ourselves. Like, God forbid, when I went into the working world, I would have ever told anyone I saw a therapist, or God forbid I had to go to the dentist
Yeah.
during a work day. You know, I think we all would just pray we could get a weekend appointment or a 5 o'clock appointment. You just didn't talk about yourself at all.
And it's so nice that things have changed so much now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It has really, we've seen a paradigm shift
Yes.
completely.
Yes.
So
Sorry, back to Santa Fe.
so I didn't,
And algebra.
oh my God, algebra, everything. Everything was it was just challenging for me, with the exception of memorizing song lyrics,
Okay.
which is strange. Like, I can sing you any song right now from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and more. Like, I'm a radio station. I have a jukebox in here. But I was unable to retain things that I was learning, even though I had some tools, writing things down, you know, cards that you flip over, note cards. And I remember my mom had been a teacher for a long time. So it's not like she hadn't experienced this. It was just maybe I rebelled also. Let's put it that way. Maybe I was at a place in my teenagehood where I was finally like, you know what? Forget this. I'm not going to go to college. I don't need to go to college. It's not for me. And coming from 2 parents that are highly educated, believe in the educational system, that was a no-no. I knew that I was supposed to go to college. And so back in those days, we took something called the SATs. I took the SATs 3 times, untimed, still got a 1040 and a 1050. Why do I remember that score? I don't care, but why do I remember? Because my senior year, a wonderful teacher who's no longer with us anymore, who I loved, Mr. Lin, made a point of gathering all of us seniors together and announcing that we had someone in the class who had the highest scores ever, Eric Anderson, who, by the way, was my boyfriend in 7th grade. He had the highest of highest. And he said, and we have someone who has the lowest. And he pointed us out.
How sad.
Yeah. And that was a real bummer, because that's a scarlet letter.
That scars you. That stays with you.
It stayed with me for a very long time, very long, too long, but it did. And so I was fortunate to be great at tennis, practiced a lot, soccer player. I love team sports. I've always been, I would say, a really good cheerleader and captain and player. I don't have pom-poms, but I've always believed in, you know, you got this, you can do this, right? And that even goes to when I had the surfing company and everything that we'll get to. So I had that, but I did not have grades to go to college. And yet I knew that's what was expected of me. My mom and dad took me to various colleges, tours. And wouldn't you know, they were all schools that I would never get into. I finally got into one school on a wait list, and that was Rollins College in Florida. And maybe I got in because I had played tennis. It was a very good tennis team. Who knows? And so off I went. And my parents dropped me off, and I cried and cried and cried. In my gut, I knew I was not supposed to be there. I was not supposed to be there. I had a really rough time trying to, again, fit in.
Yeah.
And so doing things that I thought would help me fit in, whether or not that was messing
You're just
around.
trying to force yourself into a box.
Yeah, force myself. So, I made very poor decisions for my life, for my health. I made very, very bad judgment calls with boys.
We all do that. If we're not happy in ourselves, we make a lot of mistakes with the external choices.
Yes. And so, and as I talk about in the book, bad decisions with bad boys and bad drugs. And I got to the end of my sophomore year in college, and I had some bad experiences with boys, and then I had one terrible experience where
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, where a young man, and I left college after that. Obviously, I mean, that was like, I'm not going to be here, and
living through the trauma, living through the reminders, and
we had to, while I was still there, we had to make sure that we weren't in the dining hall at the same time, that he wasn't in my building. Talk about a scarlet letter, like, certainly not anything I'm proud of, and something I've had to work through. Tremendous shame about that, that I'm now outspoken about, because that's part of my journey.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be here today without that. But I did leave school after my sophomore year and went back to Santa Fe. And I knew I was broken, with the exception of a little pilot light inside of me, which I've always had. And I thank my Nana for that, who I speak about in the book, my Nana, like my champion. And I told my parents I needed to find the longest outdoor adventure course I could possibly find in the world. And wouldn't you know, I found a 93-day wilderness leadership course in Colorado. So I live in Santa Fe.
So I want to double click on something here. What I noticed is the young girl who went to college, who was so aware that she did not belong there.
Yeah.
And then when you came out and, came away from college and you felt broken, who was so aware that I need to get out. I need to do this, be out on an outdoor adventure. And you earlier in the conversation talk about you as a child who could sense people and emotions. Were you also a very intuitive young person?
Oh, quite.
So this feeling of I don't belong here, and this feeling of the absolute need to be out in nature, for example, those were your intuitive directions, so to speak.
1,000%. I knew I needed to not be in civilization. That's what I knew. I mean, and that is pretty hardcore if you think about that. I knew I had to not be around any temptation. And that meant sexual temptation. That meant, extracurricular
Societal
activities,
pressures,
society, drugs, all of those things, because I was susceptible, wanting not only to fit in, but also I was very Jim Morrison, break on through to the other side, very The Who, I hope I die before I get old. Like that was those were mantras of mine, even though I didn't really want to die before I got old. It was just
a way of living and identifying, I suppose, because if you didn't feel good enough, you're like, whatever, let's give it a shot and have fun with this while it lasts.
That's right. That's right. Break on through to the other side. And so, and I got really mixed up with the wrong crowd. So I went on this 93-day wilderness leadership course with Colorado Outward Bound. And what I'll say is, boy, oh boy, did that kick the you-know-what out of me. I was out of shape, obviously. I had been partying a lot.
How old were you?
I was 19, and I was paired up immediately with 9 young men. We're all 18 to 20 years old, and I'm the only young woman. And we're going to be together for 93 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that first day before we head out into the wilderness, we're learning, what do we need to pack? I already knew what to bring. No toilet paper, no books, no whatever is going to weigh down your backpack, none of that. And it wasn't until that day that I knew we wouldn't be sleeping in tents. We would be sleeping in tarps, so just covering.
So what did you take with you? What was in your backpack?
Well, I ended up taking toilet paper.
Okay.
And I ended up taking a book.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't read the book until much later. I used the toilet paper and burned it when I could. Otherwise, you have to use snow. You have to pray for snow or rocks or what. I mean, you have to clean yourself some way, right?
Yes.
Bandana. I mean, it was roughing it.
Yeah.
Here I am, this kid that comes from a wonderful family, high income, highly educated, New York, going to Santa Fe, had a great house, had a great family. I knew right from wrong. I did. And here I am in the wilderness saying goodbye to all of those creature comforts. This is 1990, excuse me. There was no cell phone.
Yeah.
There was no email.
Yeah.
We were told every 18 days you'll take a shower. You'll get warm food. You can pick up Doritos if you want. You'll get snail mail and maybe a care package if someone sent you cookies or something. And you get to make a phone call.
And what did you eat on all the other days?
Well, so we were all given a government-size block of cheese. I don't know. It was orange. I don't know anything else about it. It was orange cheese, a container of chunky peanut butter. To this day, I don't eat peanut. I can't stand peanut butter. And a first-generation Power Bar, which tasted like cardboard. I mean, nothing like we have
So
today.
that's what you sustained
So
mostly
that's-
on the 93 days, most of
Well-
it, except for the burrito days.
Actually, no, we cooked a lot.
Oh, okay.
So in our packs, we each carried pots and
Your
pans.
utensils.
And we carried dried pasta, dried rice, dried couscous, the dough to make pizza, which is the cheese that we had, a can of tuna. So we would have to open that with a pocket knife.
Yeah.
And we were given these iodine tablets. Well, what are these for, right? Well, if you don't use the iodine tablets, you get giardia, which is a parasite that lives inside your stomach. And I got that. The first 18 days, I got that. What happened is if you don't let the water boil or you don't let the tablet dissolve in 30 minutes, whatever. So, but what I'll say is it's day one. We all have our packs on, right? We're fitted. You know how to, they tell you how to kind of like weigh it. You saw me already. I'm 5'2.5" on a good day. And I'm with all these other guys. We're all carrying about 80, 85 pounds on our back. And we start out onto the wilderness, and we had a guide. We had a guide with us every 18 days. And we have to climb about 1,000 feet, traverse. We're already at 9,000 feet up, so we have to get to, maybe 9,100 feet. And it's snowing, and it's raining, and it's sleeting, and it's yucky, and it's terrible.
And how cold was it?
I don't even know how cold it was. It was miserable.
Okay.
And it wasn't, I didn't even think about how cold it was. I was just miserable. And all the guys, of course, kind of like jogged up the mountain. And I'm sitting here, trying to like traverse up the mountain, and you step and you take a breath, and you step and you take a breath. And I just wanted to break my leg so badly. I was hoping I would just slip, sprain my ankle, would have to go home to what I knew, what was comfortable to me, which was not being outside and not roughing it. I was hating life. And I say that because I never say that. Like, I was hating life. And I had a female instructor those first 18 days, and she comes all the way down, and I'm crying. She looks at me. She's about 2 feet away from my face. And she just said the following: "What's going on in your head?" And I answered her, "Well, I'm singing that 9 Inch Nails song, head like a hole, black as your soul. I'd rather die than give you control." And she just looked at me and she said, "You better get another song in your head." Yeah. And talk about being coached.
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
That one little phrase there? Get another song in your head.
I mean, I have kept it in my being since I was 19 years old. It was such a smack in the face. What did I want her to say? Come on, I'll take you back. Let's get a hot cup of chocolate, let's get some hot chocolate for you. Or, I get it. You're weak. You can't do this. Let's go home. No, she didn't help me get up the mountain. She didn't take any weight off me. She said, you better fix this because only you can. That's how I interpret it. And, wouldn't you know, I hated her for a couple of days, and then I really appreciated her. And then 93 days later, I came out a very different person, very much more confident, understanding what teamwork was all about and the joys of working with a team. I saw that I was strong, not only physically strong, but emotionally strong. I mean, you're there. You have to work through your emotions by yourself. It's not like you're going to say, hey, Charlie, I'm having a really bad thought about that boy or whatever.
Yeah.
And you also spend a lot of time alone. We had something called a solo. And that's when you spend 3 days alone without anything to eat. I mean, if you have the peanut butter, you're lucky.
So as part of the 93 days, there are 3 days that are absolutely...
Yeah, you go on 2 solos.
2 solos, okay.
That's where I used my book. And
so 3 days of no talking to anybody else.
No one's around. I mean,
just on your own.
Everyone's miles away.
Wow.
Miles. There's no walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of time alone. And what I'm going to say is, and I've really only put this together recently, I've always had a strong inner dialogue and like I say, a pilot light inside of me, but I've always spent a lot of time alone. And so being alone out there wasn't terrible for me. It wasn't. I love the outdoors. I love nature. I'm very spiritual when it comes to nature and the universe and all of that. It didn't scare me at all. I think what I've seen in my life is I'm comfortable that way. If anything, I've had to work much more to let people in. That's been a big part of my journey, which is amazing that I get to do what I do today because I'm letting people in while they're letting me in.
You're also giving a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Supporting other people.
Yeah. That's never worn me out.
Okay.
No.
It's letting people in that's
I'm a situational extrovert.
Yeah.
So anyway, I came out of Outward Bound and I did get back into some bad habits, but not for long. I knew I was too smart. I knew. And but I knew when I came out, I wanted to be of service. I wanted to be what we were taught to be servant leaders in Outward Bound. That's what you're taught.
What is a servant leader?
For me, a servant leader is someone that puts the team before you. You work for them. You are here to guide, to be a Sherpa, not to have all the answers, but to certainly be that steady place for someone to come to. If they need to recharge, if whatever they need. I also think a servant leader is one that leads with love and one that knows that it's we, not I.
Yeah.
Now, today, I don't call it servant leader for the obvious reasons, but it's certainly empathetic leader or heart-based leader or anything. And but I knew I was a servant leader. And if I look back on my life, I've always been that, right? It's just I had words for it. And so then, remember, I stopped school. So my parents were very keen on me going and getting credentialed.
Yeah.
I say that in air quotes,
Yes.
getting the piece of paper, which I was adamant I didn't care about. And so I dipped myself into school here and there and here and there, took some wonderful courses. And I did finally graduate at a wonderful, incredible college in San Francisco when I was 28. California Institute of Integral Studies, CIIS. And that's a school that's rooted in deep psychology and also Eastern philosophy.
Okay.
Which I really found a home in, Eastern philosophy.
Brought it all together for you.
Yeah. So that takes me up to about 28. Yeah.
Fascinating. So I actually ran away from home at 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. and I did social work for a good 4 years. I was born and raised a Hindu, and I come from a very dysfunctional family, and Mom was the only one who earned any money at all. So we lived in a 400 square foot home, but she put us through the best of schools. And but again, what you say about get your graduation, get the post graduation, be either a teacher or a doctor or an engineer, be respectable. So when I ran away, it was almost like I ran away because I don't think I felt loved at home as a child, and I wanted to find acceptance. I think that's what it was. And I was seeking it elsewhere. And my way of seeking it elsewhere was also through service. And I felt like if I could go give love to the world and help other people, I would have a way of belonging. And that went in so many different directions. I was part of a Christian missionary community for 4 years.
Okay.
The community decided it was safer for me to be married to somebody in the group because I was so young and from a connected Hindu family and whatever. So I was married, and it turns out my ex-husband was addicted to internet pornography, so it broke my self-esteem, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, came out, got a divorce at 26, and then did my post-graduation.
Wow.
And got, by the age of 27, I had hit reset completely. So I hear you. When I read about your story, I'm like, well, I want to speak to her for sure. I need to meet you in person.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The different measures we go to try to find love and acceptance.
And find ourselves, I think.
And to find ourselves. What I don't talk about in the book, I never really go into, but I have said publicly, is I put myself into 2 very physically and mentally abusive relationships. The first relationship I ever had with a woman was incredibly physically abusive. And then there was another one. And so while I was done hurting myself with drugs, I wasn't done hurting myself. I also felt like that if I could help someone, then I would be...
Yes. You'd be okay?
I'd be okay. I'd be forgiven, whatever.
You fill the void inside by trying to fix somebody else.
And so, I, without a doubt, am a recovering codependent. I mean, it's been many years that I feel like I've had loose boundaries. I have very good boundaries now because I needed to. But I didn't.
That takes years of therapy. I hear you. It takes years of therapy to rewire the boundaries.
Yeah, I am enough. I am worthy. Those things that, I really, in the book, I talk about the mantra that I have, which is, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. And I found a song to put it to, so it's very easy for me to, kind of beat it out, when you EMDR, all that stuff.
Let's retrace a little bit. So you were 29 when you graduated.
28, yeah.
28. And then you got into advertising after that?
Well, when I was 28, I finally had a certificate of graduation. And in those days, being Gen X, you needed a college education to get a job. And then I went immediately into the .com world. San Francisco, 1998, I had many jobs at startups. And those jobs, interestingly enough, all had me manage people. Okay. Which has always been, again,
like a common thread. Yes,
yeah. I believe in people unless you really give me a reason not to. But you have to work real hard to get me to not believe in you. And so I went into this digital world, and then eventually, right after 9/11. My girlfriend at the time and I started an outdoor adventure company because I had already been trained in all of these things.
Yeah.
We both knew how to surf. So we really started teaching surfing. And I was in the water, maybe the cold Pacific Ocean for 5 years, maybe 270 days a year. Had a really killer tan. From the neck up and the hand. That's probably why I have these freckles still on my hands. I mean, it's cold. The water's cold. But I loved every minute of it. And so we did surfing and mountaineering and tennis because I was a tennis player. And rock climbing and hiking and all that stuff. And then we sold the company and I went into digital advertising.
Got it.
And then I have not left since.
Yeah.
So then when I was 39, this is literally when the financial crisis hit and everyone was getting laid off. And who knows why, but the CEO of the company I worked for in San Francisco, the CEO in London called and said, I hear we need someone with your skill sets. Now, little Claude would have said, well, what skill sets are those? But instead, I had done a lot of work on myself. And I said, how soon do you need me? And he said, 2 weeks. And I put everything in storage and I moved.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was Valentine's Day of 2009. And then I was in London for 4 years, back and forth, San Francisco or New York. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it because I got to start over in many ways.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time by myself, which I'm comfortable with. But I got to a place where I can say I still am, which is I don't hold on to a lot of drama. I don't hold on to a lot of emotional weight anymore. Not like by no means am I perfect. I just know it's just not a good use of my energy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I have my days with it, but so yes, at 40, I moved over there. And then,
That's so amazing. And I remember talking to a psychologist once who I went to therapy for when I was going through a lot of shit and the divorce was really difficult. And she's like, you need to move cities. I was like, what are you talking about? All my friends are here. Everything's here. I'm not moving. It took me a whole year to move cities. And then I met somebody else who was a forensic profilist. Interestingly, and he was like, he was a friend, and he mentored me for a short while. And he had a daughter my age, and he was like, "This is Peter, who was out in Singapore." And I met him socially in Bangalore, and he was like, "What you should do is move countries, take a break, move countries, go see the world, and just focus on yourself, rebuild, and then figure what you want to do. It doesn't matter. Just disconnect from all the pressures, right?"
Smart man.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Smart.
Till date, I am so grateful for those few years in Sheffield, England, and I felt like just that time away was therapy. Absolutely. And I hear you when you speak about 4 years in London.
Yeah. And traveling.
Yeah.
You're in such a place where you can get to Spain, you can go to Italy, you can go wherever in a hop, skip, and a jump where it's different in America. And it fed my soul.
Yeah.
I met some wonderful people through work and through social that are still dear, dear friends to me. And I think of London in many ways as one of my homes. And in 2013, August of 2013, my best friend had met Gary Vaynerchuk, my now boss. And she said, you need to meet this guy. You're like two sides of the same coin. And so she introduced us on email. And we had a very quick phone call. I was pacing my kitchen in London, and he was getting onto a plane. And then I said, you know what, I'll come to New York and meet you. Now, I knew who he was. I had been following him, especially as a strategist in advertising. So we met, and it was like at first sight. We just liked each other. Like, we got each other. Intuitively, I knew I needed to be around him, and I really knew he needed to be around me. And so 6 months later, May 8th of 2014, I started at VaynerMedia, and I was one of the oldest. The average age was 23, and I was 45. And almost 12 years later, I'm still there.
Yeah, fabulous. When did you start writing the book?
I started in COVID. I started in 2020. I worked with someone who basically would take everything I was saying, and I speak in metaphors, and I speak with my hands, and he would write everything down on the Post-its on the wall.
Map it all out.
And we got to a place where there was something there. And he connected me with a book strategist. Now, I started and stopped and started and stopped because self-doubt creeps in. We had children. I mean, life is, But I finally, I would say in the beginning of 2023, I put the pedal to the metal and eventually handed the manuscript in final January 2025.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the book came out in October.
End of October 2025. Yeah. It's been wild. I mean, I don't know why I ever said to Gary, I want to write a book, but I did. And I knew he was the right person to say it to because he would hold me accountable because that's who he is. And I told him that 10 years ago, I wanted to write a book. So it took me 5 years later, or 10 years later, actually, to manifest it. But there it is.
That's amazing. I'm curious also about your personal life since we have spoken about it, right?
Yeah.
We've spoken about the wrong sort of relationships, the wrong choices, the people who we try to fix at our own expense.
Yeah.
When did you meet the partner who was right for you?
Yeah. Well, Andrea, I met while I was living in London, and she was in America, obviously. I had signed up for to go on a sailing trip to Belize, even though I got seasick. My friends in San Francisco said, "Oh, we're going to charter a boat and we want you to come." And so 8 months prior to us leaving, I gave them my credit card. And then what do you know? It came around. They said, "We're leaving in a month." And I was like, "Oh my God, really?" And so I got all the accoutrement to not get seasick, all of the medals and the magnets. And they said, "There's someone coming from New York, and I think you'll be on the same flight."
Okay.
Atlanta to Belize and then on. So I just wrote her and I said, "Oh, hey, I think, we're on the same flight. I'll see you on the plane. I'll get us a shuttle, whatever." And so I met her in the Atlanta airport on the plane before the plane took off. And the wonderful thing is she was in a partnership already. So we just got to know each other. And I mean, I knew when I met her, but I had no intentions of coming to New York. And then on that trip is when Gary also gave me the job.
Okay.
On the phone. We had to find the cell service because we were out in the ocean in Belize and find cell service. And then he offered me the job in New York. She's in New York. So just all roads lead to New York. So we've been together as long as I've been with Gary.
Oh, wow.
12
years.
years.
Nice. 12 years. Okay.
Yeah. And we have 2 little kids, 4.5, almost 5, and 7, 2 girls.
That's lovely.
It's a whole nother chapter.
Yeah.
It's the back 9 of my life. In golf, you have the front 9 and the back 9. The front 9 was amazing and just filled with adventure and
rich experiences,
learning and everything. And this back 9 is the same. It just looks different. The texture is different.
What is the most important thing you've learned about yourself in this more deep and meaningful relationship?
Well, it's interesting because I've learned it with her and Gary at the same time, which is a level of trust and a level of intimacy, not romantic intimacy, but intimacy of sharing, intimacy of being in a team, and trust, I really have to say, because I was in so many incidences with people, whether, sexual relationships, that I look back and, well, obviously there was no trust there.
Yeah.
There was just me thinking I could save that person when I really needed my own life vest on. So it's really amazing to be with someone that has your back.
Yes.
And is a
Absolutely.
champion.
Yeah.
And, when I met Andrea the first day, she said, it's a non-negotiable. I'm having children. And I was like, oh, okay. She's 10 years younger than me. And I think to myself, when I met Gary a few months into it, when he said to me, you don't fully trust me yet. He said, you've never had a boss that fully trusts you, have you? And I just started crying. We were on the phone. And the answer was no, I hadn't, or maybe I hadn't let a boss in that close. But so trust, I would say, is the biggest thing. And it's not blind trust. My eyes are open, but I don't question it. I don't question it. And
you trust their intentions. That is such a rare thing to come about, though. So many of us go through our careers, and it takes a long time before you meet those one or two people who I can trust this person. They have my back.
Yeah.
If we were to talk only about the work context now, what does that kind of open trust look like today?
That's such the right and good question, because I think no one knows. I know that I feel it in my body. I get chills when the space has been created, when I am sitting there with a person, creating and holding that space for them to share their journey with me. I mean, it's an honor, and it's like I've said, it's very spiritual for me. And I feel it. I do. I get chills on my arms, the back of my neck, and I know that there's something here that's being created that was not here when they walked through the door or when we opened up our laptops. It is, well, what I will say is it's liberating. And there's a real freedom when you know that you're not looking for anything. I'm not looking to steal anything from them. I don't need their identity on me. I know where I begin and end. And they don't need anything from me other than advice, really, other than suggestions. They're not looking for me to come with an answer necessarily. So, I mean, it's an absolute beautiful journey, and one that, yeah, I take so much pride in being with someone on their journey, because they don't have to let me in.
Yeah.
But I certainly make it very easy, you know.
Yeah, and it's amazing how it takes a lifetime's work to find those few relationships where you can have that kind of a deep trust with.
Yeah, many of us that have been in the workplace for a while have been very tainted by managers or leaders that seem to be in it for themselves.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you can spot
I hate
that.
that.
Yeah, I hate that.
I could never work in an environment like that.
No,
Yeah.
it's terrible. It's terrible for your soul. That's the point. It doesn't have to be like that. So we're moving into the right direction.
Yeah. So we were talking about trust.
Yes.
Yeah. And you also talk about empathy a lot in your book. And I can see where that comes from. But I want to talk about this. For the first time in modern history, there are 5 generations working side by side, right? You've got the traditionalists who are probably, maybe, chairing the board or acting as advisors. There are baby boomers. There's Gen X. There's millennials. There's now Gen Zs. And Gen Alpha is walking through the door, coming in for early internships.
Yes.
Right? And, I mean, we've seen gaps in working styles, but I think Gen X and millennials sort of abided, conformed a lot more, right? So now you have, with Gen Z, a bit more of a conflict on the working style. And between all these 5 generations, there has always been and will continue to be conflicts in communication styles. Maybe also what's more important in life. And now you got the AI gap, the technology gap, right? And I'm sure, as we're looking at each other saying, oh, you work too hard, or you're too lazy, or you're too ambitious, or hey, this generation, they live to work, and that generation, they work to live, And on top of all of this, the differences that we're battling, there's layers of anxiety, okay? I think in general, anxiety is higher now at work. Gen Z is experiencing a lot of anxiety. You've got anxiety specifically to do with AI. We're overwhelmed by, the changes and the pace at which things are changing, rising cost of living, loneliness. I was doing some reading about this, that 1 in 5 people feel lonely at work, and probably amongst the younger generation, that percentage is even higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the need to be always on. Right. The more we progress, the faster we want to move forward. And we're just sort of maybe needing to work around the clock, even though innately we may not want to, right? No matter which generation you're from. What are the biggest mental health challenges you're seeing at the workplace today? And what would your advice be to leaders and to managers in coping with this?
Yeah. The biggest one is anxiety. It is absolutely an epidemic, I would say. We see it more with Gen Z, yes. That doesn't mean it hasn't been there in other ways. It might have been masked, and we certainly didn't speak about it. But anxiety, and what happens when you have anxiety is your cortisol levels rise. Sometimes you think that's adrenaline. Sometimes you think, oh yeah, I'm in flow. But really what's happening is your performance starts to tank because you're most likely future tripping about something. You're thinking about, oh, what if? Or am I going to get found out? The imposter comes in, right? All of these things. And so to answer the question of what could leaders and managers do, one, check themselves first, because it's very difficult to be there, as we've already talked about, for another person and to be able to see them clearly if you are masking or if you have a lot of the same issues. There's a saying, spot it, you got it. If you see something in another person, either you have it and you can identify with it, or you want it. No one wants anxiety. So what I would say first is check yourself before you wreck yourself. The first thing then, after you've checked yourself, is to really be able to listen to a person and listen with all of your senses, not just your ears. Watch them, body language. Watch their work. Are they sustaining high performance? Have they dropped in performance? Are they absent more? Are they spaced out more? Is their work being handed off to other people to do? All of those things that happen in the workplace, right? Do you see them never leaving their desk? Do you see them always on? Are they answering texts at 11 p.m.? No, that's not okay. So I think you as a manager or leader also have to, empower people to have boundaries and be cool with that, be okay with that. As a manager or leader, if you're sending WhatsApps or texts at 9, 10, 11, midnight, imagine what that does to your team, especially those newer in the workforce that don't know that they can say, I'm going to turn off my phone right now, or I stopped looking at my messages as of 10 p.m. Because when you wake up in the morning to a slew of messages that you weren't either privy to or you weren't on because you were sleeping, what does that do to your anxiety? It goes through the roof. So the manager and leader has enormous responsibility right there. And that's just basic ABCs. I'm not even talking about someone that you see is starting to really burn out or really fry. And then what's going to happen is they're going to go to HR, and then they're going to go to their doctor, and then they're going to get a doctor's note that says a leave of absence. And then they're going to take the leave of absence, and most likely they're going to have to extend the leave of absence. So it's a real, what can I say? It's a dog chasing its tail. If you don't get in front of it first, it is going to just go around and around and around, and it will affect people on the team because they care, number one, about their teammates. 2, they're going to have to take on extra work. 3, they might get burned out. They might feel like, listen, you don't have my growth in mind. All you care about is us getting the work done, but who's paying attention to my career? That's a big thing I hear about a lot. So pay attention. That's the first thing. Also, as a manager or leader, make sure that you have someone to speak to, not only about your own anxiety and whatnot, but like, this person is displaying attention deficit. I don't know what's going on with them. HR, maybe you can talk to them. Sure enough, maybe that person has ADHD and they haven't wanted to tell the manager about. Maybe they don't know. So there's all kinds of stuff that goes into this soup every single day that we have to be aware of. Most importantly, there's this fine line between empathy and compassion and kindness and coddling. And when we get to that place where it's all okay, it's okay, it's okay, you don't have to do that, you don't have, and so without dealing with the issue is this person seems to be unwell or going down that road or burning out. Instead of dealing with that, you just take work off their plate, kind of blind eye, and the rest of the team is just like, what is going on? Why does that person get a pass? There's all of this stuff because we're humans and no one taught us this. There's absolutely no one that has taught us, at least in my 30 years in the workplace, that has taught me how to deal with people that have anxiety. That is not a lesson I learned at work. I've learned it in my life.
Yeah.
But we're not, there's human skills that we are expecting people to know. Self-awareness, self-regulation. We're expecting people to get that at home or at school. This just doesn't happen. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a common framework that everyone's put through.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I actually wanted to go back and ask a little bit more about that because when you started answering my last question, you said the first thing is self-awareness, to be able to check yourself, right? And I know, for example, when there are days when I'm trying to do too many things, that I'm just, I'm like a pressure cooker, right? And I'm sure it's hard for the team to deal with me. And now I've gotten to a point where I'm like, slow down, just take that 30 minutes. It's okay. If it's like you need that break so you don't lose your shit, right? Take the 30 minutes, whether it's a coffee or a dinner or whatever. Like yesterday I had a crazy day and I was like, I don't care. I have work to do, but I'm going to go on a 20-minute walk, go have dinner, come back and then work because I need it for my own, sanity. And the importance of valuing your peace of mind so that you're not taking it out of somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. I want you to help me with that a bit more in the sense that ambitious leaders and managers or people under immense pressure to meet deadlines, right, deal with a lot of anxiety, experience a lot of anxiety themselves.
Yeah.
For them to be able to be empathetic to somebody else on their team or people around them, you have to first be empathetic to yourself, right? So can we get into that a little bit more?
Yeah. Self-awareness is a journey that some of us are on, some of us are starting today, some of us will start on our last days. So there has to be acceptance that everyone is on a different journey and a different place in that journey. Again, there's an expectation that if you are a certain age, you know yourself.
Yes.
I just don't know if that's true. I think that there's a lot of holes we can poke in that hypothesis. However, we do know that if you are not able to care for yourself, to give yourself a hug, to like yourself, it is very difficult to truly, truly be there for another person. And when I say be there, I don't mean put myself in your shoes. I don't have the lived experience that you have. We have similarities, but
you're not trying to be the other person.
No, I don't. Yeah. You don't want me to be, because if all of a sudden I merge with you, then I'm no longer helpful to you. That's where I said, I know where I start and I stop, and you start and stop. And that way, to be empathetic is to be aware enough that I can say, you know what, I'll ride with you. I'll ride shotgun with you. I'll be a passenger with you while you're dealing with this. But knowing that you're not going to take it on, because then you're of no use. But our work, and this is the work that I think, for like it or not, I think we're backing into, which is wellness, which is well-being in the workplace. This is something that's being presented, and so much money is being poured into wellness in the workplace. And I don't want to say it's too little too late. We need to catch up.
Yeah.
Because, there's mindfulness, there's meditation, there's this, there's breath work, there's all of these things. There's this app and this app and this app and this app. A person.
But you have to consciously choose it.
Yeah, you have to consciously choose it. And then what do I do? Well, when I'm feeling overabundance of energy or anxiety, I should take a walk, right? I know that breathing or doing jumping jacks for me is really good. I also putting on music is really helpful for me. Not everyone knows that. And so a lot of the times in the workplace, I don't talk about time management. I talk about energy management.
Yeah.
And that is a way to get to yourself. Only you know when you are tired and your energy dips. I know that around 3:30, that's when I want caffeine. My energy has dipped. I'm getting tired. So I know I need to stack all those big meetings up in the front. But I've also lived a lot. I've learned that the hard way. I know that really I cannot eat a heavy lunch or else I tank. A lot of us don't know those things, and they're basic. But I don't know who's teaching those basic skills. But to assume that everyone knows the same thing is dangerous.
So you feel like just as we learn to put the fork and knife away, just as we learn to push the chair back in, we have to learn self-awareness in order to be better managers and better leaders.
And better humans, which then leads to better managers and better leaders. But what we're doing right now in the workplace is we are promoting people into these positions without training, without, hey, here's how to have a one-on-one with someone. Here's how to listen with more than just your ears. Back to the, what do you do when someone comes to you and they're like, I'm burning out? What do you do? There's a whole range of things to do, but if you've never dealt with that yourself, or no one's said to you, try these 3 things, then you're kind of drawing straws. And I don't know if you're going to draw the right one for this person.
Yeah. So if you were to summarize it for me and give like a foundational framework for self-awareness at work for managers, what would you say?
Really figure out your energy is the first thing I would do. So what is your energy like during the day, throughout the day? Just every 30 minutes, stop for a second. How am I feeling? How's my exhaustion? Am I up? Am I ready to go? Can I go run a mile? That's the first thing. So track your energy. I think that would be phenomenal. When you track your energy, try to become a little bit more mindful of how you feel. Feelings. And so feelings, emotional intelligence. I am aware that I am happy. I am aware that I am frustrated. I am aware that I am fill in the blank. Once you are able to acknowledge in how you feel, name it, the next part is to figure out how you're going to react. So if
the choice.
Yeah, you have a choice, which is really comes down to what I call emotional frequency. Language. The language of emotion. It's one thing to say, I'm frustrated. That meeting really went on way longer than it should have. There's another thing to be very forceful in that meeting and react or act and listen to my voice get mad and all of that, which is going to shake up the entire team. So yeah, we have a choice in how we're going to react. When that person interrupts you for 3 times in a row, you don't really want to yell at that person or embarrass them necessarily in public. Make that choice of after the meeting saying, hey, Sally, can we talk for a second? I really noticed every time I went to speak, you interrupted me. I know you didn't mean to do that, but I just want you to know it affected me. Sally's going to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Or she's going to say, no, I didn't. That's a whole nother thing. But basically, you as a manager and leader need to track your energy, then be mindful of how you're feeling, and then choose how you're going to react. Because that reaction is what's going to spark a fire or chill people out or encourage people, give people belief and confidence, or just take them down the drain.
I think that's really helpful. Now, in your book, you talk a lot about showing up and being yourself, right? And some people who are listening to this might even say, hey, I am feeling anxious today, so I'm going to be anxious at work, right? You could also have that argument, right?
Love it.
So what does being yourself mean?
So let's go back to self-awareness. Self-awareness doesn't just mean emotion. It means you're goofy. It means you're nerdy. It means you like to juggle. It means whatever. Fill in the blank. What I am asking of people isn't to go into the deep end and take a big cannonball and spray yourself everywhere, because nobody wants to clean that up, and you might show things that you don't want to show. You might be embarrassed, whatever. What I'm saying is figure out little things about yourself and then offer that. Take put a foot into the water and say, you know what? I think I'm going to get a puppy. I love puppies, and I really just they just mellow me out. Or I think I'm going to get engaged this weekend. Or, God, I have to put my father in hospice. Vulnerability is so important, and it's really important for the leader to be able to show that vulnerability and hold other vulnerability before you're going to even want to enter into that. So
Give me an example.
Yeah. So as an employee, unless I am very loose with my boundaries and want everyone to know everything about me, most of the time I'm going to be guarded. I'm going to come into work. I'm going to do what I think I'm supposed to do, which is really not show any emotion, heads down, do my work, kind of be a little robotic, put some armor up, leave work, and exhale. That's most of the time what we think that's about. What I am proposing is, find the culture where you think you can be more of yourself.
Yeah.
More of yourself. What does that mean? What kind of music do you like? Oh, I heard from the grapevine you like surfing. I surf too. Blah, 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 blah. Start a conversation. Oh, we have an ERG that is for people that are Jewish or LGBT plus. Okay, I want to join that, either because I'm a member of that group, or I'm an ally. So be yourself is literally finding ways at work that you can share more of who you are. When you do that, you will lighten your load. If you don't do that, what happens, because I've done it myself, is the minute you walk into the office, you put all of Claude away into a backpack. And every day I do that, and the backpack gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And then that will lead to burnout too, because I'm spending so much energy hiding, and I'm spending so much energy trying to prove to you that I'm worthy of this job, that I'm smart, that I'll take on extra work, that I deserve the promotion. That energy, I think that's misguided energy. And so what a leader then needs to do is the same work, feel what they're comfortable sharing. Children, special needs child, dyslexic, I share that immediately so that people know, oh yeah, oh, she's dyslexic? Oh, cool. Then there's probably some tools here I can use. Yes, there are. I made sure there are. So as a leader, starting to just share more of yourself so people are like, oh, wow, they're human too? Oh, gosh, they have that. They go home to that every day. We all have these lives, and then we close them down at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that is not a way to live. I don't believe that's a way to live, and I really don't think that's a way to be productive in the workplace and to grow authentically in the workplace. You can find results. You can get the numbers you want to get and hit and all of those things, and ladder up to the board and make friends in the workplace and find commonality in the workplace. That is one cure for loneliness. Find a friend in the workplace that you can go to lunch with.
Yeah, because you spend a lot of time there.
Yeah, find someone you can just let
smile.
off the steam with. God, that was a heck of a meeting. Whoa, 3 hours later, I feel like need to go shake that off. Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah. Do you think somewhere all the external cues we've received, we've cued to a lot of leaders rather believe that they cannot be themselves. They have to portray an an image to come across as all sorted, all knowing, and well in command of things?
Yeah. I think somewhere down the line, we as leaders were told we needed to have all the answers, to not show emotion, to be all business all the time, and that we work all the time. That's what I think we were shown. I don't know where.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go back to the leaders I've had, and this was a different time of life, but leaders that I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
They just sat in an office with their door closed. I have no idea what they did, but I know they didn't ask me about what I wanted to do when I grow up, which is a big part, I think, of a leader and manager's job, which is, hi, how are you? You get the job. You're going to give me your time and your energy and your curiosity and all of your riches. And I'm going to give you growth and opportunity and at-bats and maybe relocation and working on Fortune 10 brands. And it's going to be amazing. Agree? Agree. That's what we agreed on. And then it just breaks down immediately. Someone doesn't hold up their end of the bargain, oftentimes the company.
So what do you think leaders need to undo? I am sure a lot of leaders are petrified to be themselves.
Yeah.
Because, you want to portray a certain image. You're going after a certain goal.
Yeah.
You're answerable to the board and you've been seen in a particular way.
Yeah.
Maybe that's you, maybe it's not.
Maybe it's you, maybe it's not. What I will say, if it's not and you're bluffing, it will come out some way, shape, or form. Some way or shape. You will burn out. Your behavior will go haywire. You'll just get sick. Like, you can only fake it for so long, especially if you really are faking it.
But how do you be yourself, right? And what are the things? What are the do's and don'ts?
Okay.
And because you also have to kind of lead by example.
Yeah.
So and I don't know if there are enough playbooks out there for senior leaders on how much to be authentic, what's okay and what's not.
One of the things I ask when I'm doing this coaching, the high performance coaching of our leaders, it's a very easy question. What are other leaders that you admire? Who are they? Michelle Obama? This person? Michael Jordan? Who else? Gandhi? Okay. And why? Why? Now, the leaders of today, Michelle Obama shares much more of herself than a first lady in the 50s. Okay, we know what she's interested in. She has a podcast. She has books. Do I want to exemplify her? Great. I'm going to follow a little bit of her lead because she's showing me the playbook right there. That's the first thing I say is, who do you admire out there and why? Okay, then what's the gap? What do they do that you don't do? And I'm not talking about academics, and I'm not talking about pay grade. I'm talking about how do we think they show up? And how do you show up? Is there a delta? Okay, what's the delta? What are we going to do to help you get from here to there in time? It's not going to be overnight. That's the first thing I do immediately, which is like, if they're literally like, I want to work on my leadership skills. Okay, well, who are you as a leader? What kind of leader are you? And I talk about that in the book. I give some ideas, some archetypes. And what do you want to be? Who do you want to go to? Who do you want to be, right? And so it's a journey. And so when you ask the question of like, how do I even get to know myself? That is something that only you can do. I would suggest spend time alone. I would suggest write in a journal. I would suggest read books, listen to podcasts that you think are going to be familiar. They're going to give you something. Meet with people who all of a sudden you're like, whoa, we have a lot in common, and you come from a completely different part of the world than me. And you're like, the world isn't that big after all.
Yeah.
So finding support groups, finding that friend, finding people that you can just take off the armor with slowly but surely, because it is armor and it is heavy. If you're in a culture that is one of fear and scarcity, and you have to stay there because you need a job and you're not able to go without, you must find a friend at work. You must. And there is going to be someone there that is going to want to be your friend. That is what I can say. Like, there are many different types of people in the workplace. You will find someone else who's dyslexic, right? You will find someone else who has a brother or sister with special needs. That's just what our populations are all about right now. But it takes a willingness for you to share some of yourself, which means trust yourself. All you can do is trust yourself before you trust another person. I mean, that's the deal. That person or persons will show themselves to you. And hopefully what they're sharing with you is something that agrees with you. And you're like, I want to know more. Can we go to coffee? Right? One of the things that I wouldn't say is put all your eggs in one basket and think that this is going to be the culture that is going to save you or is going to beat you into submission. If you know when it's right and you know when it's not right. If you can leave a dysfunctional culture, then I highly suggest that you do.
Yeah.
And then there's so many questions to ask in an interview process to figure out, is this right? Is this right for me? How do they treat people? Is there scarcity? Do people share their PowerPoint decks? Like, what do you do? How do you all deal with failure? What do you do when you lose a client? All that stuff.
You pick where you're going to go so that you allow yourself to be yourself.
Yeah.
That's where it begins. And once you're inside, I always feel like, with my direct reportees, I have this debate now and then in my head saying, okay, I've got this going on in my life. I think sharing about it makes me more human. But I'm like, but how much is oversharing? I've got this debate in my head constantly.
Well, where does that debate come from? It doesn't come from her. It comes from somewhere else. It comes from
my perceptions, I suppose, of what is okay or not okay. But I'm also trying to test and learn and unlearn.
Yeah.
So I don't have a framework to follow for this.
Yeah. Or a benchmark.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's something I think that's so fascinating in the workplace, because as someone that created an entire department that is now the HR department out of nothing, of not HR, but I created it based on hospitality. I created it based on psychological safety. I also have to test and learn because I have a lot to say, and I would obviously I wrote a book.
Yeah.
I don't share half of that stuff with the people that are my direct reports because I would never want them to feel like they need to take care of me or that they need to tippy toe.
Yeah.
So as the relationship opens up, then it's like, oh yeah, listen, I was just like you when I was 30. Everything was emotional to me. Everything. I get it. I'm happy to walk you through ways in which to start to compartmentalize in a healthy way.
Or what I learned.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much for us to share that I don't think is patronizing or blah, 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 just words. I think that leaders lead with love, and it is a choice you get to wake up to every single day. Just like you get to wake up and decide you're going to be authentic today and tell the truth, or you're not. You get to make that choice all day long.
I also think it's a judgment call in the sense of, speak the truth, but how much, in how much detail. You're there to lead and guide. Like you said it like that. Don't make them your crutch. They're not here to rescue you or support you, right? And so knowing when to put a full stop to what you're saying.
Yes. Knowing when to say when. And by the way, none of us are perfect. Yeah. I overstep. Gary oversteps. We've sometimes, at work, depending on how long you've been there and how well you know people, sometimes you do just go that way a little too much. And you're like,
because you're figuring it out. You don't know.
You figure it out, or someone tells you, hey, that was a little too much. You might have literally just shared a little too much. I mean, we are human, but you have to also, this is the biggest thing as a leader, is accountability. And then what do you say? You go, that's on me. That's my bad.
Yeah.
I said that, and I didn't mean to put shame out there or whatever. That's pointing thumbs at yourself first, rather than blaming someone else for something that is your responsibility. So judgment, how to regulate your emotions, right? So I feel this. Now, what am I going to do about it? Again, the choice.
What's interesting is, and I see this coming up again and again in this conversation, looking inwards and investing in the time needed to continuously look inwards or frequently look inwards and ask.
Consistently. It's you. That's you. That's all you have for 90 or 100 years. This is me for 90 or 100 years, God willing, right? And so I would want to get to know myself. I know what it's like not knowing myself, and it's very painful. That's what I can say. So go through the journey. Now, if you asked me, hey, Claude, how much of work's responsibility is it to take you on that journey? I have different answers depending on what I'm seeing. I think,
Interesting.
yeah, it is. I don't think work is therapy.
Yeah, it's not. This is your personal journey.
This is your personal journey. I think it's very important for us as the employer to provide certain things to help you through your journey at work, which will hopefully help you in life. But by no means are we therapists. By no means am I the oracle of truth here. I can offer some things based on myself and based on some education, but
And based on the context we're in.
based on the context. But, I will not say to someone, do you have a therapist? I will say to someone, do you have support outside of work? And if not, we have a list of people that are in our benefits. Here you go.
Yeah.
That's the catch right now. And it's something that I get asked a lot. And I would say a ton of vendors come my way with well-being products, AI products, all of those things, which are so fantastic. But I have to be very choiceful about what we bring in because it has to scale.
Yeah.
But it also needs to be able to touch a person in some kind of bespoke way while scaling.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. Yeah. We talked about leaders. And what, as a leader, if I'm able to be myself within the boundaries of, the work context, so to speak, then that also influences the culture that I create in my team and in my organization. There's another aspect I wanted to touch upon, which is that, let's say you're my boss and I'm reporting to you, right? How much of what you do and how you are influences my mental health, do you think?
So I really, really like that question. How much of who I am and what I do influences mental health? If I am using my words or my actions to shame you, embarrass you, criticize your person, then that's going to influence your mental health quite a bit. I am your boss telling you that you are bad, not worthy, yada, da, da, da. I'd say that's going to influence your mental health pretty much and scare you. Right now, just to take a left turn for a second, there is so much fear in the workplace. AI is here. The thing about the fear that we're getting with AI is very common to the fear as human beings we have all the time, which is, am I replaceable? I am replaceable. What am I going to do? Am I replaceable? I don't know. Who knows? We don't. It's too new right now.
So you think this fear of am I replaceable has always been there?
Yeah.
And you think it's just accentuated now?
Yeah, and I think it was accentuated when digital came about.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're not just TV or radio ads. But am I replaceable is the same fear as I'm not worthy or I'm not enough. And that is that's a human fear. We've already talked about that in the beginning. If you don't get hugged as a child, you will either search for that hug everywhere or you will go about life thinking you don't need anyone.
Yes.
History is repeating itself just in a very rapid way.
Yeah.
And every day there's something else that's happening. So how do we help someone that has the fear that, am I replaceable? And I don't have all the answers. The only thing I can do is be transparent. I don't know, but what I do know is that you need to be knowledgeable with AI. You need to understand what you as a human being and you as a project manager can do with this technology. That's what I can tell you. So study, take the trainings that we offer daily, and let's keep talking about it.
And what's your advice to senior leaders, like business leaders, on facilitating the adoption, facilitating change?
Well, I think it's up to all senior leaders to be change management agents. And that means whatever it is that is happening in the world, in the zeitgeist, again, hey, everybody, I want you to join these trainings. We have them daily. It's up to you. I can't take you there. But if you get left behind, I'm not going to be able to do anything about that. So I highly advise you take an hour out of your weekend also and get on Claude or get on Gemini and fiddle around. That's what I can say. That's a leader's responsibility. And that needs to stem from the top. It needs to permeate throughout, whether or not it's in your all hands or in the newsletter that you send out. I mean, it's something in the beginning of 2025, I said to the crew, which is, and this was 2025, I want you all to spend 20 minutes a day figuring all that out and playing. Now I would up that quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about culture and authenticity. Do you think your style of hiring, right, and filtering somebody for your organization has changed a bit in the last few years, that the emphasis is a lot more now, not necessarily on existing skills, but on adaptability?
10 years ago, when I started the Chief Heart Officer role, immediately I changed the way we hired and spoke. It used to be culture fit. And if they could figure it out, that's great. But, oh, you went to school with my brother and you're my brother's best friend's cousin, you're hired. Bye-bye. And then I changed it to skill set fit and culture addition.
Oh, okay.
So skill set fit, I'm going to hire you because you have the skills here. And I can see by speaking to you, you happen to be a good person. You answer questions in a we, not I. You talk about your failures freely, openly. Like you're gonna be a good addition to our culture. You seem kind. You don't seem selfish or cynical, but you can do the job. Now, it's not only today's job, it's tomorrow's job. And so there has to be curiosity, or perhaps it's a side hustle that you're doing that makes the recruiter know that she can do this job, and she probably is going to be on the track to do that job when that hits. So whether or not that's production or project management, or, we hire a lot of creators.
Yeah.
We're not hiring creators that have never created. Now we're hiring creators that are actually influencers, that have the proof and the evidence.
Yeah.
That's really where we
the
are
new
today.
age storytellers.
That's
the digital first storytellers.
You've done it.
You talk a lot in your book about fitting in, and you differentiate between that and belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of us confuse the two in our heads.
Fitting in to me is camouflage, unless it's really authentically you. Fitting in. What are you fitting into? If we're all trying our best to bring ourselves into this team, then we want all of those different parts of ourselves. We want you to be you, and you to be you, and you to be you, because that's what makes the mosaic. If we just wanted apples and apples and apples, first and foremost, you'd all fit in because you're all apples. There would be no diversification. There would be no diversification of thought. There would be no idea of what goes on if you're a banana or a tangerine or a pineapple. It's the same with people. It's the same. So when I think about people trying to fit in, that's literally putting a mask on every day. And that has a cost. I know it. I did it.
Yeah.
So many of us did it. So many of us still do it. And so an example literally is when early days at Vayner, when I thought I needed to sound mathematically, financially smarter than I am, because I thought our CFO, who's a wonderful person, was thinking poorly about me. That I really literally thought he's looking at me every day and being like, God, she's dumb. Because I'm not financially literate in a P&L way. It's not my strength. And I went to Gary one day and I said, oh God, I really think he thinks I'm just a dummy. And Gary said, well, go take care of it. Go take him to lunch and talk about it. And I did.
Oh, wow.
And I brought it up. And he's like, are you kidding me? That's the last thing I think of. Like, I've been wanting to ask you about this about your life. And that just was, and I mean, I'm an older person and I thought, God, I need to fit in every time I talk to him. Camouflage. I am not that. So I was putting on a mask. Belonging is something that human beings are wired to want and are wired to live inside of. And if you think about it, newborns and that birth mom immediately see one another. Oh, the mom puts the baby on her chest or whomever. That creates oxytocin. Oxytocin is that hormone that gives us that sense of, I'm safe.
Yeah.
I belong here. I'm bonded to you. And you can breathe. Belonging is something that we all want. We all are working towards. And we look for these pockets. Where can we find our people? Not fitting in. And that's going back to why these ERGs or support groups are so important. You can be an apple, banana, and a pineapple and still be a part of this group. Fitting in for me is just, I just think it's a waste of energy, quite frankly. And I do want to shout that to the mountaintops, because I think people that are just starting their careers or coming out of whatever and starting something think they need to look like, they need to sound like that person. And like, it's impossible.
So belonging is you being yourself and bringing yourself to the community, to the workplace, to the team, and feeling like I'm good the way I am.
I'm good the way I am. I'm accepted the way I am.
Yeah.
And
I contribute the way I can.
Yeah. And you, the team, want that. I would hope, because if you have, like I said, if you have same, what are you actually saying? Nothing new. It's just same.
Yeah.
So it's our birthright to belong.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you.
Yeah.
You also talk a lot about riding on calm.
Yeah.
You know, when shit hits the roof and
it does.
things are rough. Yeah, that happens now and then.
does.
It probably happens more often than we'd like.
Yeah.
You talk about riding on calm, and this kind of connects back to that whole, leaders and dealing with your own anxiety.
Yeah.
What is riding on calm? How did that concept come about for you?
Well, it came about for me, I think, through Outward Bound. I mean, for sure. Literally, we were at a high altitude and it was a sunny day and we all had our backpacks on. Remember, it's me and 9 guys.
Yeah.
And we were finishing breakfast. It was fairly early in the morning. So like boiling the water, having some coffee with grounds, yum. And we heard a rumble, and we had been trained by this time. It was almost the end of the trip. We had been trained on what to do if you see a flash flood and blah, 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 and how dangerous that is. And so we saw the rumble. And there was one of the guys who was the tallest, biggest guy. He was about 6'4" or so. And he's the one that was like, come here, everyone come here. And he wrapped a big rope around this enormous rock. We all clipped in with carabiners and we hid behind this rock. this boulder. It's not a rock. It was a boulder. It was enormous. And the flash flood whipped through us. Didn't hurt us because we were behind this enormous boulder. But it took it took trees. It took just things straight out of the ground. And that's riding on calm. Like, we were all shitting in our pants, just to say. But we also knew we were safe. We were together in a pack, right? If one of us disappeared, we were all going to disappear. And, when that happened, they happen and they're over in seconds, really. But the landscape was completely different.
Changed, yeah.
And when we got down that mountain, there were people that were lost. They lost their dogs. They lost, lives. It's like an avalanche. Imagine an avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that I was calm, cool, and collected. No, I was afraid, but I was with a team that I had been with for a while now, and we were all very different people, obviously, but we knew how to take care of each other and ourselves. So calm for me obviously comes from within, but it also comes when I'm on a team. Everyone has a role, and so if everyone sticks to their role, then I believe that you can find your way out of it. Mm-hmm. I'm a big optimist. Mm-hmm. I'm not a rose-colored glasses. I'm not a toxic positivity type of person, but I do believe in possibility. I do believe in working together to get from A to B. I really, really do. I do believe that when it's dark, the sun will come out again. I believe it because I've seen it. So there's no reason for me to get all anxious because I know it will pass. Mm-hmm. I used to be a person that future tripped a lot.
Okay.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I wonder if that's going to happen. Is that person, blah, blah, blah.
So the worst case scenarios are playing out in your head?
Yeah. Yeah. Or I would look in the rearview mirror, idealizing a situation. Mm-hmm. And my brother once said to me, he's like, leave the past where it belongs, in the past. And it was so basic, just like the instructor said to me, you better get another song in your head, that I really remember it. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, the past belongs in the past. It's gone. The future, like I want the future to be great and everything, but if I don't stay here right now in the present, I'll never get to the future. Yeah. So staying present, which is very difficult for us, myself included, I think is the trick to staying calm. Because in this moment right now, everything is great. Mm-hmm. And in this moment right now, everything is great. So I'm just going to continue with that. Everything is great right now. Everything is great. And if it isn't, then I'll deal with it as that comes. So riding on calm, I think I wrote riding because of the surfing and, riding the waves. And the waves aren't always calm. And it's Mother Nature, like I said, and like, it doesn't really care. Mother Nature really doesn't care who you are, what you do for a living, how much money you have, and who you date. Mother Nature's like, I'm in charge. And so hopefully you're prepared for me. Yeah. And being calm, I think is just it's an easier way for me to live. It really, really is. And it's something that I really try to help my kids with because, they're little kids and everything is what if. So riding on calm is
why and what if?
Why, what if, why, when can I get there's this saying that a wonderful Buddhist psychologist, Tara Brach, talks about, which is the if only mind. If only I had a Ferrari. Mm-hmm. You get the Ferrari. Oh, if only I had 3 Ferraris and a Maserati. You get that too. If only I had a yacht. When is it enough? Just be present with what you have. And that's a practice we all have a right to and we all have to work on.
What was the most difficult thing you've dealt with at work as the chief heart officer at VaynerMedia?
People's emotions, for sure. But I mean dire. Like I had a person that I think, I don't know if she had a mental break or a schizophrenic break, but definitely was in a really, 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 really bad place. And I had her in my office and I was trying to reason with her until I realized that that she was in a different place. And so we called her parents, and she ended up going to a place where hopefully she's well now. That was years and years ago. But that was like, okay, this is extreme. I've never dealt with this. And I've never dealt with someone that is really unwell. And there's nothing I can do about it other than keep her safe until her parents answer the phone. There's also been some times when I've had to let people go in this job and other jobs where, one person just threw a glass of water on me in a past job, was just very upset.
Okay.
And I understand, you're losing your job,
upset.
so you're going to have emotions. That was the way he chose to act. So it's, well, we've already said this, we have no control over other people. The only thing I can control is hopefully the way I go into those conversations, the way I greet someone, the way I show up. I can control all of that, and hopefully create a space where no one wants to throw water on me.
We've talked a lot today about feelings, right? Checking in with yourself, how to be there for other people at work with healthy boundaries in place, about belonging versus fitting in. But there's also a school of thought that's just like, here are the numbers, right? This is what you need to all work towards. Here are the KRAs. Beyond the point, I give two hoots about what happens to you as an individual, as a team. And we're in business, it's transactional, right? To me, it almost feels like for the longest time, it felt like it's two different schools of thought, two different ways of working.
Yeah.
Except I know in my own business, I'm always trying to marry the two because I don't know how else to do it. Okay. So let's talk about ROI, right? Do you think that investing in self-awareness for a better outcome at work with the people around us has an impact on the bottom line?
Yes. So the way I'll say that is, do I believe that investing in people? Yes. Has an enormous ROI. Everything from retention of your highest performers, so low attrition rate, word of mouth in terms of recruitment. So maybe you don't have to pay 30% more for that person because your friend suggested that friend. We get a lot of word of mouth. We get a lot of return boomerangs that want to come back. They're like, okay, the grass wasn't greener. That's a great feeling, especially if they left on great terms. You get longevity. Think about the people that you have in your workplace that have been there, that are high performers, that have been there 6, 7, 12 years. The IP that they carry to replace that person is not
That's
just
a 4-year, 5-year journey.
Oh, yeah.
And cost.
The cost, and then the training and all of that, and them unlearning things. Loyalty, right? People that are staying here show the people that are coming in like, oh, this is a great place to stay. And right now, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm about on my 12th year. I've never stayed 12 years anywhere. I was a 2.5-year girl at max. Hop, 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 because that's how you get a raise, or you get a promotion and whatnot. But if you're at the right company where they are very proactive about your growth and development and your results and performance and creating a meritocracy, then you can have both. We call our culture the honey empire, and we try to marry that, the honey, the people, doing the right thing. That's the emotional awareness. That's all of the things that we spoke. That's the honey, being the bigger person, right? The empire is our business. It's not the empire of honey. It's the honey empire. And it's just a small percentage difference, 51%, 49%. But that 1% makes all the difference. That 1% of leaning in on caring about someone, checking in with them. Hey, I heard that you had a death in your family. Congratulations, you're pregnant. All of those things. Like, that matters. Oh my God, they care about me. They see me. They see me not just as a number. We want people to stay with us and evolve with us so that they become that leader that can deal with uncertainty and adversity. And they can also know how to hold space. And they also know how to show executive presence in a boardroom and create magic with clients. Like, yeah, at the end of the day, like this, we're in relationship business here, and we are creating a product that we want someone to buy.
Yeah.
That's the eye has to be on that prize. If we can be good people, then it's just sweeter. It's just so much sweeter when you get to that prize.
Absolutely. You can have fun along the way.
Yeah. And so what isn't the ROI? Right?
Could you share some numbers around this? When we talk about impact on bottom line?
Yeah. Well, I don't have financials, but what I can say is our attrition numbers are usually between 6 and 9%. I read every single exit interview.
Okay.
And we obviously have AI systems that are churning that out and telling us what the patterns are, right? Looking at data, giving you
and this
patterns.
is a 2,000-member company.
This is 2,000, yes.
6 to 9% attrition, and you read every single
and
exit.
so does Gary. Every single exit interview.
Okay.
Because I'm looking for patterns. And when I see something that I haven't caught or someone else didn't catch it, it bums me out. It's like, God, they were such a high performer and they're leaving for $30K. Like, okay, could we have not countered them? What did we not do along their journey? What I'm finding is more and more and more people leave when there is not a growth map for them. They used to leave because their manager wasn't a good manager.
Yeah.
Now I think it's really they don't see or feel growth for themselves and they stagnate out unless 30K is what they need, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's something amazing for their life and it's going to change. But the attrition numbers are something I keep a very close eye on because, well, that's going to tell us how we're doing in terms of, are we keeping the people that we want to keep? Are we growing and developing? And so when a large percentage of our population has been there from 6 to 12 or 13 years, we're doing something right.
Absolutely. Educate me, since I haven't studied this. What's the cost to the company when the attrition is higher, when the churn is more frequent?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's almost 30%, 33% to replace someone. Okay. You pay 33% more to replace one individual. Recruiting, training and development, like we said, maybe their best friend leaves too. I mean, it's such a high tax that doesn't need to be there, which is such a bummer. It's such a bummer when you're like, God, I just lost that person and their friend and their friend and their friend, because it's so hard to find the talent you want right now. We're all in that talent war. And especially with AI coming, and we're going to need more and more people who can navigate and also teach and train AI as fast as it's coming. So we're all looking for many of the same unicorns right now, I have to say. And hopefully our culture, our benefits, what we provide, the growth that we share with you prior to joining is enticing enough to be like, come with us. We're doing something very different here and you're going to have a great time.
So 30% more fun and 30% more profitability on
Let's
people.
do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fabulous. Thank you so much,
you.
Claude. It
Thank
was
you.
absolutely lovely speaking to you today.
Thank you so much.